Keep that in mind, and we'd all most appreciate it. And now, it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker. So many times, of course, somebody gets up to a podium like this and says, of course, our speaker tonight needs no introduction. And from the number of you who have been circulating around Farhad this evening, I assume that has never been more true. All of you know Farhad personally, or by reputation, from his long service as superintendent of Marin County Public Works, and more recently as, if I may say, the brains behind SMART. But you may not be aware that earlier in his career, Farhad was a counterterrorism officer in the army of the Shah and barely escaped from revolutionary Iran, from the rule of the Ayatollahs in 1980, I think, wasn't it? Yes, in 1980. Since then, he continues to follow Iranian affairs very closely, day by day. I just learned tonight, having dinner with Farhad, that he's on the phone with Iranians in Iran every day. And his analyses and observations have been eagerly awaited and consumed by people in the Defense Department, in the White House, in DEA, in the FBI. Those are the agencies he listed. There may have been one or two others, but who knows. And so, without further ado, I'll turn over the microphone to him. And let's give him a warm
Good evening, everybody. You can hear me? Yes? No? We go to plan B. Better? Yes. First, I want to stay. Sorry, the engineering me. So first I want to thank Frank and World Affairs Council for inviting me, but I also want to thank Dominican University, one of my most favorite campuses, to have a live audience today. It is so wonderful to see all of you without your masks out there, and you know, people get to see each other and say hi, but you couldn't recognize them, so it's great to see you. I wear masks even though it's been uplifted, so for those of you wearing masks, good for you. But I'm not going to wear it because you won't be able to understand me. So, in the next 4 hours, what we're going to do, correct? I have 4 hours, I was told, by till midnight. We will uncover a lot of mysteries. So, before you leave tonight, you will be an expert on Iranian issues, and then we will talk about the agreement, and then you can go get a job with National Security Agency or any other agencies, because Iran continues to be a hot issue. Although this other event that is happening is for a moment taking just a little bit of attention from Iran, but I talked to a couple of my Russian friends who are here, and they both predicted nothing will happen beyond what we see. So if that's the case, then Iran continues to be a hot topic. So what we're going to do is very quickly walk you through who's in charge in Iran.
Mullah.
Very good, but who's in charge? What is their decision-making process? And what are the powers of center? You know, what are the center of powers? So, and we're going to walk through that very quickly, and then I'm going to walk around and ask you questions. Because there is no answers, it's really for us to think and analyze and figure out what do we do. President Biden has his hands full when it comes to Iran, because there is 43 years of history, and every American administration, from Republican to Democrat has tried very hard in the last 43 years to figure out the Ayatollahs, how to deal with them, how to fight with them, how to reason with them. And as you can tell, so far we have not been successful. So why that is the reason, that's one of the topics we're gonna look into. So, very quickly, the power structure in Iran. Just like here, where we have 3 branches of government, right? The executive branch, right? The judiciary branch and the legislative branch. Iran government is the exact same thing. So they have a judiciary branch, the executive branch, and then the legislative branch. But then there is a catch, right? It would be too simple if there was not a catch. So first, the Ayatollah gets to appoint 2 of the 3 branches, the heads of branches. And then there is a parallel government that is really the most powerful in Iran. So while Iran has a president, then we think their president is as powerful as our president. And there is nothing further from the truth. We think their legislative branch really is like our Senate and our Congress, and they have a lot of legislative authority, and the fact is they don't. And even though they pass something, it can be overruled. And then the judiciary branch is the worst of them all. The head of judiciary is actually appointed by this other unelected person, which we will talk about. So the parallel government in Iran is under a government known as Velayat Faqih, meaning that there is a supreme leader, and the supreme leader says, I am God's representative on earth, and I am here to manage all of your affairs until such time that Mahdi, the finisher, will come and will bring justice for all on earth. Convenient, good. So the supreme leader, a couple of interesting points. I am God's representative, not God's representative for Muslims. I am God's representative on earth for all of you, Christian, Jews, Muslims, Zoroastrians, whatever you are. He represents you in his mind. And until the Islamic Messiah shows up, then he will remain as the supreme leader. So that's the school of thought. So tonight, many times I will ask you to think like they do, because that's the only way we can understand their decision making. So the supreme leader has the following powers. So remember, we have the 3 branches of government, but the supreme leader has the following powers, just few of them. He, and it cannot be a she, it's only a he appoints the head of judiciary, who then manages the entire court system. He approves the election of the president. So you have a president that supposedly has gone through election. Before it's announced, he has to approve that election. And if he doesn't approve, then another name comes out. Okay? He also gets to fire the president. So supposedly people elect somebody, the supreme leader then gets to dismiss. And he has done that. He has dismissed one president because he didn't like him. He's also the supreme leader that is in charge of all armed services, the intelligence services, the security services, and he appoints all of the commanders of armed forces, as well as the head of Secret Service and their version of CIA and their version of FBI. He also appoints the head of radio and television. Why is that important? To control the message, right? In a democratic country here, we're so blessed. We have everything from, well, I won't mention names. People get their blood pressure up. But, here we have a variety. In Iran, You only have the radios and the televisions that the government allows them to be, and he appoints the head of them. So from a messaging point of view, you only hear what they want you to hear, regardless of which channel you're tuning in. He also determines, according to the Constitution, all policies of the country. Okay, so no matter what the president, the legislative branch, the judicial branch, or the executive branch say, he, the supreme leader, makes all of the policies. Okay? Very complicated. So he is, however, not elected. He's a clergy, and he's appointed by a very complex but a completely corrupt set of how he becomes an appointed person. And if somebody wants to remove him, it becomes even a more complicated, which it's almost impossible to remove the supreme leader. So all we need to remember is without the supreme leader approval, nothing gets done, and everything that happens that it's good, he claims responsibility and credit for it, and everything that fails, then he blames the government and the president. And that's why he has a civilian side, because they get to be blamed for everything that doesn't work. So if the economy sucks, it's the president's fault, right? And if the agreement with America doesn't go well, it's the president's fault. But if it goes well, then it was his policy and his vision. Okay, are we clear?
Yes.
Very good. On the security side, there is the exact same parallel. So Iran has Navy, Air Force, and Army, just like we do here. And just like here, the Navy, the Army, and the Air Force, their job, according to the Constitution, is to defend the country. Okay, pretty straightforward. Then there is a parallel with that, and that is called Islamic Revolutionary Guards. In Farsi, they call that Sepah. So I'm going to keep saying Sepah tonight. So Sepah is the Islamic Revolutionary Guard. Their written job description is to protect the leader and vanguard the revolution and export the revolution to outside Iran. So they have a parallel military whose job has nothing to do with the country or protecting the country from foreign enemies. It's simply to protect the supreme leader and the vision of the revolution. And their final job description is to keep an eye on the regular military who are left over from the Shah's time, and they were created in the 1920s after a model of 2,500-year history that the Persian Empire had. So these guys' job is to keep an eye on those guys while they protect supreme leader. They also have two other very, very important jobs. One is to maintain law and order internally by jailing, shooting, torturing, and killing any of the Iranians who come to the streets and want to raise concerns or the condition of their living. So, what Sepah was created was in 1979 when the Shah was overthrown by the Islamic fundamentalists in Iran. The Ayatollah at that time did not trust an imperial military and wanted to create his own dedicated set of bodyguards. So he created this militia who go through a lot of zealot trainings. So their ideology is exactly the ideology of the Ayatollah, meaning we represent God on earth. So think about that as a very right-wing and a very conservative viewpoint. So the way I describe, many times people have asked me, how do you describe what Sepah is? So here is my description. So Sepah is a combination of KGB, mafia, a drug cartel, and a multinational corporation, all of them put together with guns and government ID. So think about what I just said. So why KGB? Because they are, over the years, have become a very active and very brutal intelligence agency. Actually, they're credited in a wrong way, but in the intelligence community, they're credited with being very, very good. Why mafia? Because money laundering, corruption, and making money out of illegal activity. Drug cartel, because they are big-time player in movement of drugs out of Middle East to Europe and into United States. Big time. And why multinational corporation? Because they own over $150 billion of businesses in Iran, which I'll talk in about a minute. And of course, the guns and the ID. So they have also mastered their ability to deal with any internal opposition. The last major opposition in Iran was a year and a half ago. And I will tell you in a minute, and they were dealt with the most severe way. Men, women, and children, they don't care. So Sepah has its own ports, its own airports, does not report to any government entity, and only reports directly to the supreme leader. So think about that mafia setup and a drug cartel with having their own port. Why? Because then you can bring in and take anything out without any oversight. Airports, people can come and go as you wish. They also manage some of the largest foundations in Iran. These foundations are multi-billion dollar business entities that have no government oversight. So they manage and do a lot of money laundering in Iran and in the Middle East. They control many universities. Why that is important? Because of educating the next generation. They manage radio and television. Why? So the message is the same. They manage construction. They manage mining. They manage communication. They work very closely with Chinese in managing people's cell phones. They manage the internet, which, as you know, in Iran, Facebook and Twitter and many of those are illegal. You cannot have those. But interestingly, the supreme leader has all of those accounts. So imagine, the supreme leader uses Twitter and uses Facebook, but an ordinary Iranian is not allowed to. Okay. Human rights condition, right? Why can't you impose human rights conditions as part of your nuclear condition? And that's what President Obama tried. He tried to impose human rights conditions, but the supreme leader said that is my red line, and no, this is about nuclear bombs and not about human rights. And that's why there were no conditions at that time. So, the big issue continues to be right now is, should our government reach an agreement with Iran, given all of this background? Is a weak agreement better than no agreement? Think about what I just said. So if we cannot get a strong agreement, is a weak agreement better than no agreement?
Is it better than the status quo? Have you improved?
Correct. Is it better than having no agreement, meaning status quo, right? And that's where the issues start coming in. Okay, so Another major obstacle, remember I put Israel on the board, we haven't gone to it yet. Another major question is a question of trust. We and the Western powers say, we don't trust you. You hide your nuclear facilities in the middle of residential areas. Why? Because the Western powers do not like to go and bomb Western, right? Residential areas. And therefore, we want to have unconditional access to all of your facilities. The Ayatollah says, whoa, wait a minute. I don't trust you either. Because I make a deal with this president, and 4 years later, this other guy shows up and says, nah, I don't like it, I'm canceling it. So why should we have any deal with you? This is their thought. That has a good point, doesn't it? And I hate to say that, right? So how do we deal with that? Did Mr. Obama try to get a better deal? A different deal? So I need to tell you about a couple of things. The word agreement versus a treaty. Do we know what is the difference?
Congress has to approve a treaty.
Very good. An agreement is at the president level.
Yeah.
A treaty is at the Senate level. If an agreement is just an agreement, then it's at president's level. Mr. Obama signed off on it. The next president, Mr. Trump, said, I don't like it, and I'm canceling it. However, if it's a treaty, meaning it's gone through the US Senate, then the next president needs to go and get the Senate also approve, modifying it or canceling it. So a little bit of lesson of history. Did Mr. Obama try to go to the Senate? The answer is yes. And who was able to prevent him from turning it into a treaty? Rich McConnell. And who else?
Ted Cruz.
And Ted Cruz. No. So I'm going to give you 3 names. Okay. Ready? This makes your admission ticket tonight. Okay. Senator Schumer. Who's he?
Majority leader.
Majority leader now. Yes. Here is what he said. I'm going to read you exactly what he said. After study, careful thought and consideration, and considerable soul-searching, I have decided I must oppose the agreement and will vote yes on a motion to disapprove. Another Democratic senator, these are powerful people, not a Republican, not any one of those you mentioned, Senator Menendez. And who is he now? Chairman of the Senate Foreign Committee, the guy who runs all of that. He said, if Iran is to acquire a nuclear bomb, it will not have my name on it. He actually spoke on the floor of the Senate 3 weeks ago for 1 hour, lining up all his reasons why we should not have an agreement with Iran. 1 hour. If you go on YouTube and listen to it, passionate about how corrupt and horrible the Ayatollahs are, and why are we wasting our time having an agreement with somebody we cannot trust. That's basically what he said. Then, of course, there were Republicans like Senator Flake and others. So, while Mr. Obama was working very hard to deal with his own party, as well as other party, and try to turn this into a treaty, right? The Supreme Leader made a tweet in the middle of all of this, and he basically said, and I'm quoting, Islamic Republic will take all possible means to support anyone who fights Israel. and basically checkmate all the efforts that Mr. Obama is trying to do. He's trying to get the Senate to turn this into a treaty, and the Ayatollah once again says Israel gotta be destroyed. And so as a result, here is what Secretary of State John Kerry said. And I'm quoting, "We've been clear from the beginning, we're not negotiating a legally binding plan." Because he didn't have the votes, so you have to have a face saving, right? We're negotiating a plan that will have in it a capacity for enforcement. So, now, what are your thoughts? Is President Biden, if he has an agreement, is he going to be able to get it through Senate?
No.
Can we get anything through Congress on any side, on any issue? So, that is the problem, right? And Iran, the Ayatollahs are saying, you must guarantee that this agreement is going to stay in force. Okay, so that's one of the big stumbling blocks. So, in addition to that, what Iran is asking is of yesterday, because things shift. So number one, they want all sanctions removed. There are dozens and dozens of sanctions that have been imposed on Iran since 1979, started by Jimmy Carter. So not everything is Mr. Biden's fault. So since Jimmy Carter, every single president has imposed sanctions. Iran says all of that needs to be removed. They want a guarantee that we just talked about. Okay? And then they want, this is the key, that they are having major disagreement. The Revolutionary Guards, the one we talked about, be removed from the special list that we have them on, and it's called the key government figures sanctions list, that makes them a terrorist organization, and therefore nobody can make any business dealing with. Mr. Biden was entertaining this, but the senators on both sides of the aisle, as well as Israel, have been having major difficulty with that. What does United States and the P5 want? They want Iran, who is now enriching uranium at 60%, I'm sorry, and supposedly want to go to 90, to pull back into 5-6%. And United States has said, we're not willing to remove all the sanctions. We're only willing to move the sanctions that is within my authority as the president, because many of the sanctions were imposed by Congress and the president has no authority. Many were imposed by United Nations and the European Union, so none of those they can do. And they want unconditional access. Okay. So now let's go and talk about Israel. Okay. I think the new Prime Minister has said it right. So I'm going to give you a couple of his recent quotes. This is Monday and Tuesday. So yesterday and the day before. So Mr. Bennett says, and I'm quoting, "We inherited an unacceptable legacy. Iran is the closest it has ever been to a nuclear capability. When I fought in Lebanon against Hezbollah, I was fighting against Iran's proxy while Iran was immune. Now that I am Prime Minister, I have reassessed the situation and Iran will no longer be immune." Think about what that means. The Iranian regime, I like what he's saying, is rotten, corrupt, unable to supply its citizens with basic needs. The economy is collapsing. Entire regions are without running water. So my new perception is that Israel must enter the arena and work to further weaken the head of octopus. These are pretty serious statements, right? So Israel is saying, I'm getting ready to get in the middle of this fight. His next thing he said, revive Iran nuclear deal would mean a more violent Middle East. Now, late last night he said, we see an agreement shortly. So, sounds like a deal has been struck. But Israel will not be bound by a restored agreement and will retain the freedom to act against Iran. So imagine your national security, your Biden administration, and you hear your closest ally in the Middle East basically say, hey, these guys want to destroy me, and I'm not going to reach an agreement. So what does Israel want? They want an oversight on the nuclear program, and they want no funds be given to Iran, so Iran doesn't fund Hamas and Hezbollah. The reason they said that is as part of the Obama deal, depends on which report you read, $100 to $150 billion was given to Iran as part of the 2015 deal, with most of it gone to their private accounts as well as Hamas and Hezbollah. So the Prime Minister says lifting sanctions from Iran's failing regime is part of this agreement. It means billions will go to the international terrorism. So for them, that is their red line. Okay, I'm going to come to an end. Now, who wants inside Iran a deal?
Scientific community, the business people,
Okay,
and the street.
and so normal people want peace. Can I paraphrase it? Who doesn't want it? But the Ayatollah is negotiating, so I'm going to go back and forth with you, right? So let me give you some data. Sanctions that have been imposed since 1979, they create black market, correct? And what does that mean? That means a country that is subject to sanction has to export their items much cheaper, correct? Because nobody's buying it. And they have to buy items at a much higher price because they're subject to sanction, right? That's the black market. Agree?
Yeah.
Do you know who controls the black market in Iran? Say it again. The Ayatollah and the Revolutionary Guards. That's why I was explaining to you who they are. So the two agencies or the two entities who control the black market worth hundreds of billions of dollars would agree with a agreement only if
Lift the embargoes, lift the...
what they make in black market is compensated as part of the agreement paid. That's why they got paid $150 billion in 2015. And that's where the big fight is right now, is how much are they going to get, because otherwise they don't need to have to give up a black market. You see where I'm going with that? Okay. Then I want to read you what the Iranian parliament said yesterday. So these are all, it's kind of like, you see, it's like a show that is going on. Okay. So they said that the terrorist American government, with their puppet, British, German, and French government, are trying to impose a bad agreement on us. Which countries did they leave out in the resolutions? China and Russia. And why that is the case?
China is financing a lot of the infrastructure in Iran with a trade,
Perfect.
work trade agreement.
Absolutely. So Iran's top two trade partners Remember, we're in a sanction condition, meaning other governments are not dealing with you because they're not allowed, is Russia and China. Okay? So it is very confusing, but then Russia and China are participating in P5 negotiations. So you see how complex issues are for President Biden, that a part of your team is also a big part of the dealing and is big part of the problem, but they have to be involved because they are a part of a solution. So I'm almost finished, but last night, the Prime Minister of Israel said a deal is imminent, but it's only for 2 years. Because that is the end of President Biden's current term. If he's re-elected, then they can have an extension, and if he's not re-elected, then whoever is the next president can deal with Iran. Now, who knows if this is true or not? So, meanwhile, the saga continues. Iran and its proxies continue to create a lot of problems in Middle East. So dealing with this issue is very, very important. But I don't want to leave you because I see how quiet you've become. And it's like, God, this is so depressing. Well, it's not depressing. These are facts. So when you hear President Biden or whoever in the White House is trying to do something, things are a lot more complicated than we see on this news or that news. So I want to leave you with something positive and uplift you. And I see there are a lot of ladies here, so I want to share with you a couple of good Persian pieces of history. Okay? So 2,600 years ago, an old clay cylinder at the size of a football, American football, was discovered. And the year was 539 BC. This was Cyrus the Great Human Rights Bill. So if you go on United Nations and you see the translation, many people say it was humans, our first Bill of Rights. 2,600 years ago. It said that people had the right to choose their own religion and established racial equality throughout the kingdom. As you know, Cyrus the Great freed the Jews who were captured and enslaved by Babylon for 400 years and said you can go to your homeland. But these we have read in the history. The part I want to tell you about tonight is how women in ancient Persia were treated. Tonight I told you how the Ayatollahs treat them, but I want to tell you how the ancient Persia treated women. Women were not only highly respected, but in most cases they were equal to men in the ancient Persia. Women could own land, conduct business, receive equal pay. United States women's soccer team just got equal pay after a damn lawsuit. And this is 2022, right? So they were, by that decree, to get equal pay. They could travel freely on their own, and they could be a businesswoman, and they were military women, and participated in combat. Okay? So why am I saying this is because the Ayatollahs have made a significant tactical mistake. I'm not talking about nuclear tactical mistake. They have pissed off Iranian women. And Iranian women are leading more and more demonstrations in Iran, are creating more and more problems for the Ayatollahs. And I am putting all my bets on the Iranian women who remember their ancestry and look at what is happening today. They say that they want a secular and a free democratic Iran, and their publications and in their demonstrations, they say over 2/3 of the 85 million population in Iran want a secular and a democratic government and not the Ayatollahs they have. So with that as a closure, thank you for your time. We still have 3 more hours to go. But, appreciate it.